Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to The Reason We Learn Lunchtime Live on this Friday afternoon. Today, I want to talk about some things. I want to talk about school discipline, freedom of speech, hate speech, violence, all that stuff. But I'm going to give it a couple seconds for people to be watching. And while we're waiting for folks to show up, I'm going to ask you once again to please consider liking this video, sharing this video, and subscribing to the channel. When you subscribe to the channel, it helps me get more people watching the channel, which gets the word out to more people. So I really do appreciate that. You'll also be notified when I make more videos, which is awesome. If you're interested in education topics, you can join my locals community at thereasonwelearn.locals.com. It is free to join, but if you are a supporter, you'll have access to my Zoom calls twice a week where you can get more one-on-one attention for your leaving public school, moving to homeschool, et cetera, or just trying to make the decision if you're just thinking about it, not really sure. The locals community can help you out. So, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me. What brought me back live this week for a second time was a reaction video to one of my videos. It's kind of interesting. I'm not used to people reacting to me. It's happened a couple of times, but it's happening more and more. And this was not a negative reaction. It was just a reaction that posed a lot of questions that left me realizing I didn't answer those questions. And the video, or in several of my videos where I've talked about school discipline, I've talked about words not being violence. I've expressed the opinion that I don't think words are violence and I don't think hate speech is a thing. And this reaction video made me realize there are a lot of people who agree with me about a lot of things who don't agree with me about this issue, who sort of stop short there and say, "Hang on a second, Deb. I think words can be violence. I think, when we start getting into incitement and things, I think you're wrong here, or you might be wrong, and I have some questions." So I thought, okay, well, one of the best ways to address this is to just address it head on. So, first, the video I made the other day about the two girls fighting in New Jersey because one allegedly said something racist. Now, I don't have all the details. I'm not sure anyone really does as to whether the student said something racist to the person hitting her or around her. I can only tell you from my own past experience with my own daughter that the incident my daughter was involved in as a bystander, but a bystander pulled into the school discipline about it. The student who got violent or threatened violence against my daughter and her friends had heard something they were discussing. This person wasn't in the conversation and interpreted those words to be racist. What were those words? "I went to a Trump rally and I had fun." The person hearing that thought that was racist and got up in people's face and threatened to get violent. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Ego Brain. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Smash the like button, share. Um, so I don't know. And we now live in a world where the definition of racism, the definition of, what we don't like, what offends us has gotten so broad that when you hear a story about a fight or somebody getting punched or somebody getting shoved or some altercation taking place, even between adults, at a school board meeting, let's say, they're threatening me. There's a threat from the parents. I feel threatened. There was an article just today about, how many educators feel threatened by parents these days. And that one had all kinds of words, like the definition of educator was a little murky, and the definition of education leader was a little murky, and the definition of threat wasn't given. And that's part of my point, that when I tell you words aren't violence, I'm probably being overbroad. But what I'm saying is you're going to have to get more specific if you want to claim they are. And the burden is on you. The burden is on the person who's claiming words are violence to explain how and why. All right. And the reason I say that is that, these words mean different things to different people. The word racism, the word racist Are we talking about the N-word? Or again, are we talking about mentioning Trump in a positive light? Are we talking about saying, let's go Brandon? Are we talking about saying, your hair looks nice, I like your braids? Are we talking about, calling someone a bitch? I mean, who knows? But even if we take the worst of the worst interpretation of some of these terms, that's hate speech. And even we are talking about the N word, even if we are talking about someone directly offending you to your face and saying, you're a this, or I hate such and such people, or such and such people shouldn't be allowed to blah, 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 right? Then I still have to say the burden is on you to prove causal relationship to any violence that ensued. And what this video suggested is that you being called a name is what causes you, is what incites you to punch that person. That's a direct causal relationship. You call me a name, I punch you, you're responsible. Hi, JP8 Potter. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. And I just dispute that. I still believe that individuals are responsible for their individual actions. And when it comes to incitement, I'm going to lean into the legal definition, because the legal definition, which I'm going to show you guys, because I think I want to make sure we get it right. All right. I don't want to be accused of saying, the wrong thing, because this is important. All right. This is the definition. Oh, it's kind of small. Let me fix this here. All right. So incite, it's a verb. Incited, inciting. Okay. To cause someone to act in an angry, harmful, or violent way. All right. Now, to cause, as I said, I think you have a burden of proof to, that you have to meet to show that someone saying something to you caused you to act in the violent way. Somebody calling you a name doesn't cause you, it can cause you to, feel bad and angry and all kinds of things. But to act on those feelings, you made a choice. You made a choice. All right. But again, the law is going to look at the totality of the situation. Hi, everybody. Now, it also means to cause violent action or feeling. They were arrested and charged with inciting a riot. Now, that's the dictionary definition. If I look under criminal law, and this is Britannica, and there's a bunch of stuff in here about conspiracy, whatever. But if we go to incitement, here's where it talks about incitement. Thus, the offense of incitement or solicitation consists of urging or requesting another, not you. Okay. So do you really think a person who's insulting you is urging or requesting that you commit an act of violence on them? Does that make any sense? No. So the implication is that incitement is there's a third party here. All right. And so you're requesting or urging someone else to commit a crime, doing something that's committing a crime. Now, let's look at, for example, January 6th. That's often described as there was incitement. Well, under the law, there wasn't. And in fact, the ultimate report came back and said there wasn't, because saying, let's march to the Capitol is inciting a protest. I mean, if you want to call it incitement, but it's encouraging a protest rally. It's encouraging a march. Marching is legal. Protesting is legal. This is all covered with freedom of speech. Now, climbing the walls of the building, vandalizing the building, breaking into the building, or going into the building legally and then violating laws inside the building, that's not legal. Those are illegal acts and should be punished accordingly. Of course, I think we all agree. Civilized people agree that when you break the law in those ways, then you individually should be punished. But to suggest that the person who said, now we're going to march to the Capitol and tell them what we think, tell words, not actions, to suggest that that has incited the violence that later on ensued is a bit of a stretch, because you have to be specifically saying, go do a crime, go hurt people, kill people, murder people, vandalize buildings. I would suggest there was a lot more incitement going on by BLM in advance of riots and vandalism last summer than January 6th. That's my opinion. You can disagree. But if I'm looking at the definition of incitement, so in that video, the question was, well, don't you think that if you call some guy the N word, that you've incited him to violence? No, I don't. Because I don't think that when you call the person that name, you're saying, hit me, come on, hit me. Now, there's a big difference between should you say that and may you say that. All right. Now, leaving aside the location, because we're going to discuss in a second where that matters. But should you call someone the N word? No. Is that a smart thing to do? No, it's definitely not a smart thing to do. Should you probably assume that the person's going to feel pretty pissed off about it? Probably. And, might they get so pissed off they hit you? That might happen. And so you should consider that in your thinking before you open your mouth and you call someone a racial epithet or some other nasty word or some other, say something else that's nasty to a person using words, possibly even around them. So even if you are talking near them, if you're using, epithets and saying negative things about someone who's standing within earshot, that's probably not a good idea. You should not do that. But now we're talking about ethics, morality, common sense, human decency, these kinds of ideas. But we're not talking about legality. I hate to break it to you folks, but it's perfectly legal for someone to say something you don't want to hear to your face, even. It's legal. And guess what's not legal? Hitting people. Assaulting people is not legal. That is a crime. That's not self-defense. It is not self-defense. He called me a blah, blah, blah. I'm sure that sucked. And he's a jerk. And we don't like it when people use language like that because that is not socially acceptable in most, civilized circles. Okay. So sympathy all day long. Yeah, I am really sorry that happened, but that does not give you license to commit assault. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Now, you might say, but isn't it incitement if they stood there for 5 minutes and said, you're this and you're this and you're this and you're this and blah, 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 and then you hit them? Maybe. Could you walk away? Did you have easy egress? Could you just turn your back and leave that place? Leave that person behind and not listen to what they were saying? Because if the answer is yes, then it's not incitement. You still had options to not hit them, namely not to listen to them, to put them in the rearview mirror and get gone and not allow them your headspace, okay? Or, your hearing. Just don't give them in the audience. If you were backed up against a wall and you physically couldn't get away and you're absolutely trapped, well, now it's not about what they're saying. Now it's kind of like you're being sort of kidnapped. You can't leave. You physically are trapped. That right there creates the conditions for self-defense, even if they were saying neutral things to you. They've got you physically trapped and you can't get away and you feel threatened. You have a defense. But if you can still walk away from the mean words, if you can still leave the building, leave the room, leave the environs, whatever, it's not incitement to violence. At least not in my estimation. Your mileage may vary, but that's where I personally, that's my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal scholar, etc. Now, this I'm speaking in general terms. So you might wonder, okay, well, what does this have to do with school discipline? Because school is school and it's different, Deb. It's, they can have different rules above and beyond the law. Absolutely, they can. They can. And so let's talk about that. On a school campus, you can make rules governing, what people can say and not say to a point. Because remember, students still have freedom of speech on a school campus. Supreme Court has ruled that. Their freedom of speech does not end at the schoolhouse door. So you've got to be very careful when you make speech rules and speech codes, because you have to make sure you're not violating the freedom of speech of the individual student in exchange for safety, security, etc. And what we've seen recently is they have gone really far. So what used to be like, you may not, verbally abuse someone, which is more along the lines of like, you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this. That's where I'd go from saying mean words to abuse, because the kid has to stay in school. They can't just leave the building, and they probably can't easily leave the classroom. They may have trouble you may be backing them into a corner. That falls under verbal abuse, and that shouldn't be tolerated. Does it give the person license under school rules to hit them though? No, it still doesn't. It still doesn't excuse violence of assault, but you can punish the speaker. I think that would be okay. You can say to somebody who is backing someone into a corner and verbally abusing them, bullying them, following them around, stalking them. If you have evidence to that effect that they're using words to harass, because harassment is, by the way, a crime too. That's harassment. It's not incitement, but it's harassment. And harassment is, there are laws against that in the outside world, not just on school campuses. So if you have evidence that someone is harassing you on campus or off because of your relationship with school and school wants to discipline that, I think that's perfectly okay. But understand that harassment is a pattern of behavior over time. And while it may not involve physical abuse, it can be words, but you still have the burden of proof about the pattern and over time. And by that, specific person or group of people. So it's not an automatic. Saying a word or group of words one time on one day is not harassment, and it's not incitement. And that's where I think we're getting all confused. It's like, you said a word I didn't like, you said something I didn't want to hear, boom, I'm justified, words are violence. That's how far we've come. And so when I say to you, hate crimes aren't a thing, in general, I'm talking about when you commit a crime against somebody and it's specifically motivated because of who they are. That may be true, that you did that thing because of who they were. But the burden of proof is on the prosecutor, whoever, to prove that's why you did it, that you would not otherwise have done it, and that was purely motivated by hate. And you better be consistent. And this is something else I'm seeing in society. We would love to talk about hate crimes and, oh, there's a hate crime and it's real and it's real. But it's very one-sided, isn't it? Lately. So it's automatically assumed that if, for example, a white person commits a crime against anybody who isn't white, that will immediately be called a hate crime. If a white police officer injures or kills somebody who isn't white, they want to get them on civil rights violations and hate crimes, purely because of the disparity in the races. They tried to do that with the George Floyd case. Now, definitely homicide. It was a human cause. It was, murder according to the jury. But was it a hate crime? Was it racially motivated? Even the prosecutor didn't make that case. And yet people will still say that it was. They'll still call that a hate crime, because the current standard, and this is what I'm disputing, is it depends who you are, whether it was a hate crime or not. Not who the victim was, who the perpetrator was. And I'm sorry, that's not okay. It either is or it isn't. And I'd rather go with the standard of it isn't, because crime is crime. And as egregious as it is to commit a crime because you don't like somebody's race or because you don't like somebody's gender or their persuasion, sexual orientation, whatever, that is certainly despicable. Okay. And we definitely want to shun that, in terms of social standards. Whether or not it makes the thing you did more of a crime, I think is debatable. And especially if it's not going to be enforced across the board. So if you want hate crimes to be a thing and you want mean words to be prosecuted as, hate crimes, then you best do it across the board. You better be prepared to go after people who are running around going, well, white people, Jews, Asians, this, and this, to their faces, even on school campuses, and saying, yeah, they were justified in hitting you. They were justified in doing whatever they did because you said this, that, and the other. You called them snow roaches. You called them, crackers. You called them this. You called them that. The day I see that, we can have a chat. That's not happening. That's not happening. I personally hope it doesn't happen. I don't think that would be good. I don't want that. I don't want parity in that regard. I'd rather we just go back to the standard of we don't hit people. We don't harass people. We don't verbally abuse people. But these are separate things. These are separate rules. And the burden of proof still has to be on the people who are setting the rules and who are justifying, any kind of punishment based on a violation of those rules. And so when I tell you that, words aren't violence, it doesn't justify the beatings on school campuses. I'm talking about situations where we are not presented with any evidence that the person had a pattern of harassment. We are not seeing any evidence that the kid didn't have a way to get away or report it to somebody else or do something more constructive than commit assault. We're not seeing even hard evidence that the things that were said were objectively hateful. So broad is the definition. So I would rather err on the side of free speech. And here's why. Because the second you give somebody in a position of power, whether it's in power at a school over kids or in power in government over all of us, the power to decide what is hate speech and what isn't, what is, it's justified to hit you or commit an act of violence against you because you said the words, it it's open season on words. You are opening a door that may be hard to shut. And I really think we ought to think long and hard about doing that, because that's when you run into things like people in Scottsdale, Arizona, the father-son duo. The one is the president of local school board, one is the son, and they decided to use school district resources to create a secret dossier about the parents who disagreed with them on COVID policy, on CRT, etc. They were collecting private confidential data, putting it into files, storing it up, collecting license plates, pictures of their children, names and ages of their children, divorce records, all of their background check records, all things that were supposed to be confidential and not meant to be taken out of these records and harvested by any one member of the school board for personal use. And then the guy was hiring private investigators to go and follow these parents around. And why? Why was he doing it? Because of wrong think and wrong words. They're saying words. Oh, look, he says in a video, they're raising the Gadsden flag. Let's write that down. So as soon as you start saying that words equate to violence and you don't clearly define which words, which situations, what has to happen next for it to have been incitement, etc., you're opening a very big door. And like I said, good luck closing it. I am sure that this father and son thought they're just doing a good thing because these people are causing the threatening conditions for school board members. I feel threatened. And if I feel threatened, then I guess I am threatened. No. It used to be we understood that. And it used to be we taught that to our children. Do you remember back in the bygone days of sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you? Names won't hurt you. Okay. Names used against you to your employer, alleging that you're this kind of a person, saying that you're this, that, and the other, and bad things will happen to your employer if they continue to employ you. Cancellation is what I'm talking about. That hurts people. That's groups of words used for a certain purpose to slander, libel. Those, by the way, also not allowed. You're not allowed to defame someone's character. You're not allowed to lie about them for the point of hurting them, with the intention of hurting them or hurting their livelihood or their respectability or all those things, the reputation. You're not allowed to do that. Those things are already prescribed. That they already are. Okay? So that we're turning a blind eye to because we've decided that the specific words you use are violence. So we're saying it's okay to slander people. It's okay to libel people. It's okay to harass people, as long as they're saying these little words that we think are mean and violent. That's where we've come to. And we're doing it to our kids too. You said this cluster of words that we've deemed as racist, including, like I said, let's go, Brandon. We've decided that today's standard is this, or whatever subjective, impact is more important than intent, teaches critical theory. They were impacted. They felt threatened. They felt bad. Their self-esteem took a nosedive because you said these words. Therefore, we're going to justify physical assault, harassment, bullying, slander, cancellation, doxing, the whole 9 yards. You had it coming because you said a word. You had it coming because you were hateful by our new subjective definition. And like I said, I'd rather just go all the way back to ground zero and say, you know what? None of this. None of this. We're going to start with the basics, folks. We don't commit acts of violence, actual physical violence against other people. No initiation of force. Big difference. Somebody hits you first. Now it's self-defense. But we don't initiate force against other people. Right? We don't lie to other people or about other people. Don't do it. I don't care what your cause is. I don't care how awesome your cause is. I don't care how awful of a human being that person is. I don't care if they walk down the street with Tourette's. N-word, 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 N-word. I don't care. I don't care. Tell the truth. Do what you got to do to deal with that situation. But you don't go and, let's go collect a dossier and lie and tell all these untruths and make sure we hurt them as much as possible because they said a word I don't like. Yeah, it's a terrible word. People shouldn't be using the word. And yet they do in music all the time. Now, that brings me to my next point. Double standards. You've got music, bad words, N-words, all kinds of words, etc. How many of these people have been arrested for incitement? Exactly 0. Okay. We've got talking heads on the news. White people, white people, white people, white people, white people are this, white people aren't that, white people are this. Everybody who voted for the new governor of Virginia is a white supremacist and a racist. Are these nice things to say? When you say them over and over and over and over and over and over, and they're not even true, and they're not backed up by any facts, and you go and then single people out and put their faces on the news, and that this guy voted for Youngkin, white supremacist, racist, and then his employer sees it and goes, oh, I don't know, it's they deal with clients. Is that okay? Because right now it is. It's perfectly legal. These people are doing it, and nobody's saying, that's a hate crime or that's incitement. So if that same dude lost his job, was ganged up on and, lost his bank account, lost his job, lost his wife, lost his friends, lost everything that was important to him and hauled off and went down to the news station and punched out the person who started it all, would that be okay? Would that be okay with y'all? Or do you think no, we still don't hit people? Wouldn't be okay with me. And I still think that guy has a very solid legal case to sue, which is what you should do. So violence is not a justified response to these kinds of actions. It's not even a justified response to verbal abuse. Like I said, unless you're literally backed in a corner. And I've been on the receiving end of verbal abuse many times. And you know what? I had to take physical action to get away and legal action to deal with it. I didn't slash any tires. I didn't vandalize anything. I didn't physically hurt the people who are doing it. That's just not what you do. Okay. So in a school situation, what we're doing is we're teaching kids inadvertently and explicitly that there are some instances where it's okay to be violent if someone used mean words. And the way we're doing that, as I said in my video the other day, is by fixating on what words were said. What were the words? Did they say something violent? Did they say something mean and racist? Let's go find the justification instead of saying, I really don't care. It's kind of irrelevant what they said. It's irrelevant. You do not beat someone to the ground, pull their hair, kick them, hit them, and, cause potential permanent damage or even death. That could put someone's life at risk. The school is ultimately responsible, are they not, for the safety of the children? Who was more at risk? The person who heard the mean words or the person getting their butt kicked because of the alleged mean words? But if you spend the rest of the day investigating the mean words and not dealing with the violence and addressing that and saying, look, guys, here's the deal on this campus. Come to us if there's mean words. Come to us if you're being harassed. Maybe we can do some coaching. Maybe we can figure out some kind of a mediation if you want to still have anything to do with these people. If not, I suggest you keep your distance. Oh, and P.S., this is not socially acceptable on this campus to use mean words. Yep, you're within your rights to do it. I suggest you don't, because we do not support that. That is wrong. It is morally wrong. It is ethically wrong. It is not in keeping with our culture of kindness on this campus. You can say all this stuff. You can teach kids all these things. Please do. Please do it more. Because like I said, while we're busy focusing on these mean words, we're empowering the people who would go after those folks to say whatever the hell they want. To say whatever they want and get away with it, up to and including inciting fights. Go kick their ass. Go beat them up. Go do that. Go do that. Go tip their lunch tray. Go do that. That's incitement. Happens every day on school campuses. I get notes from teachers all the time talking about the incitement, the actual literal incitement that happens in the hallway where people are telling other kids, go beat them up. Go hit them. Go do that. Go. and the kids do it. And that kid doesn't get punished. And even the kid doing the violence may or may not get punished if the person on the receiving end of the violence is the right kind of person, has the wrong views, doesn't look the right way. That's considered, in fact, we're dangerously close to your existence's violence when we start talking about the un-you-know-whatted. When we have the CEO of the company that makes the you-know-what calling people criminals who have caused, the man heads up a company that supposedly engages in scientific research, caused millions of deaths, he says. I believe there have been about 2 million deaths worldwide, not in the United States, and many of them died before his little product was available. In fact, most. And some of them today are dying even after having his little miracle. But no, the people who aren't getting it, the smaller subset who aren't saying, no thanks, not interested in the magic sauce, are murderers, are criminals, according to him. Do you know what happens when you start referring to groups of people based on this one choice that they've made that actually doesn't technically affect you? Certainly not directly. And I'm giving them a lot of leeway because I don't think it affects you at all, period. And in fact, if you look at the science, it definitely doesn't. But when you call people like that, you say they're violent and they're criminals, whatever. How is that not incitement? Could be. And here's something else that could be considered incitement because, and it's another part of the double standard that I've noticed. Maybe you've seen it too. Let's take a look at this little clip. All right, here we go. Perhaps you heard this. Why is this okay?
I think we have to stop coddling people when it comes to this and the vaccine, saying, oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are. The people who aided and abetted Trump are stupid because they believed his big lie. The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind. Because they are keeping the majority of Americans behind.
You want to leave?
What do you think about that? They're doing it. A lot of stuff. They're holding people back. So, if you're going to say, yes, there's such a thing as hate crimes. Yes, there's such a thing as incitement and mean words equal it. If you want to go down that path and you want to open that giant door of subjective judgment of what is and isn't and who gets to choose, by the way, where are these we're these virtuous angels who are going to choose which are the words we're allowed to say without getting our faces beat and we're not allowed to say, or we should expect to get our butts kicked and sorry, no sympathy, no charges brought against the person who hit us because we incited them to hit us. Who gets to choose? Should your principal choose for your school? Should the school board choose? What? Or isn't it better? My argument here is not that it's a good thing to say those words. It's not that it's a good thing to do anything. Okay, let subjectivity be subject. Let you guys be the judges of what words you should say and you shouldn't. And like I said, I think a school can say these are our standards of conduct and how we like to treat people and be general about it. You start getting into specific words and you're going to just make lists all day long. Someone's going to go, this word should be on the list. This word should be that. No, I don't think that word should be on the list. Take that one off and this one off, but this one and that one and that one and not. Where does it end? So just general statements of like, be kind and respectful of other people, understand where you end and they begin and what boundaries are. And while you have a right to speak, it doesn't mean you should speak every minute. You should have a filter. That would be good. That's part of maturity, is knowing when to open your mouth and when to keep it closed. Remember, if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. Remember that little adage that we were taught when we were kids? That'd be a good rule for a school. Things like that would be good guidelines. And then after that, you just draw a line in the sand. And if people violate that standard, that code of conduct, and they say mean things, and they do mean things, and they're nasty, and they gossip, and they do things that kids tend to do, it is still incumbent upon you to walk away, report it if it's a habit. If it's harassment, report it. Here's what harassment is. There's a pattern. It's repeated, et cetera, and you can't get away from it. But under no circumstances should you take justice into your own hands, literally, unless and until they touch you. They touch you. Now, I still, as a school principal, I wouldn't be like, go ahead and haul off and hit them. But I would say to potential touchers, we're going to treat it differently if somebody hits you because you hit them. We're going to see that a little differently when it comes down to deciding who gets suspended. So if we have it recorded on our cameras, or there are lots of witnesses that say you hit the person first, and that can be corroborated, you threw the first punch, you're going to be judged a lot more harshly than the person who defended themselves. That would be my rule if I had my druthers. But the first rule would be no violence. Words are not violence. And I just explained to you why. And like I said, it's not because I don't think, there are no such thing as, words that make you feel rage. They can. But it's still your decision to feel that rage. It's still up to you to decide to give people space in your head that results in those negative feelings. And we used to teach children that self-control and mastering their emotions was part of growing up, was important, was a skill. That used to be what social emotional learning was about teaching kids to manage emotions, very negative emotions, especially in school, where you're surrounded by who the heck ever. And people aren't always nice to you, and people aren't always going to like you. But there was still discipline. There was still, at the end of the day, but if you don't, it's still going to be on you. We have to draw the line somewhere. We can't make it that everyone is always equally guilty. That's not true. It just isn't true. And I really defy anybody to come and tell me that calling someone even the meanest word there is right to their face is the same as getting a punch in the nose. It hurts. I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt to be called mean words, but it hurts more if you've been taught to believe that the person saying those words matters. In the sense that if you weren't taught the lesson that the second someone devolves to nastiness and name calling, they should be less relevant in your estimation of what they're saying. The respect you have for their opinion should immediately go down. That's an important lesson that children need to learn. Unless and until somebody is speaking to you decently and kindly and respectfully, there's no obligation for you to respect their opinion, and that's their problem. That's what I was taught. Somebody tells you you're all kinds of things. I mean, I grew up Jewish, so there were people who on occasion said nasty things to me about Jews or around me about Jews many times because they didn't know I was Jewish. So they'd say all kinds of really hideous things about Jews right in earshot of me. And most of the time I ignored them, but I made a mental note, not worth my time, not worth my attention, steer clear of this person. They're a dick. Okay? Didn't have any interest in associating with them. But the few times it was said to me or in a conversation in which I was directly involved, I simply turned and said, I'm Jewish. And they'd be like, whatever. And I'm just like, just thought you ought to know. And sometimes they would apologize and say, I'm sorry, and that was wrong, and I shouldn't have done that. And I'd be like, yep, it was, and you shouldn't. That was it. I didn't haul off and go, I'm going to go tattle on you and punch you and you're a bad person and I am so wounded and I can't function for the rest of the day. I knew I had the moral high ground, not them. And I kept my composure. It was super easy because I'd been taught. It's not like I was born that way. I didn't emerge from the womb with that level of composure. I was taught repeatedly, largely by my father and grandfather, that people are going to say a lot of things. People are going to dislike you. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you live. I don't care what class you are. You will encounter people in your life who say nasty things to you, about you, around you, etc. What are you going to do about it? And the worst thing we do for our children is we don't have this conversation. We let them believe that everyone should at all times be nice to them or else that they will be traumatized. They will be victimized. They should go and tell somebody else to come and protect them. We don't teach them they have all the power they need to protect themselves right here from words. Not from physical violence, but from words. And that in fact, in so doing, they may protect themselves from violence. When you remove yourself from the presence of people who can be verbally abusive or verbally nasty, you make it less likely that you will be on the receiving end of physical violence. And when they know they can't get to you, there's another lesson I was taught. They're looking for a reaction. They're looking for a reason to hit you. They're looking for a reason to gang up on you, further abuse you and make hay out of that. Don't give it to them. Don't give them the satisfaction was the line. Why aren't we teaching our children this? Why aren't we empowering them? Why isn't part of discipline teaching kids these kinds of coping skills? Instead, it's all about let's sit and have a circle, and let's have a conversation, and let's get along, and let's all be nice, and let's go. Yeah, it's nice, except children are still children. They're not mature. They aren't in control of their emotions. And having a conversation, even if you think you're going to have this preemptive conversation and it's be nice to people because people feel like you. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, how about also add the other piece that, and if you don't, and if you can't, and if it doesn't work out, here are the standards. Here's what's going to happen. You have some responsibility in this. Individually, you have responsibility. We can't all do everything as a group. You're going to go out there in the hallway as an individual person and walk up and down the hallway and deal with BS. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to run and go, I need my circle? That seems to me to be like hamstringing the kids. You can't wait till the next restorative circle. You can't, if you always go to an adult, there's going to be a day there's no adult there. The adult's busy. The adult doesn't give the right answer. The adult doesn't understand. We need to empower children and let them know they've got a lot more power than they think. And this is why I say things like words aren't violence. It's not because I want to belittle the feelings of the person who's hurt by the mean words. It's not because I think there are no words that are mean and hurtful. It's because I think there's a lot more to be gained by telling the person in the receiving end that's not the same thing as being hit. It's not the same thing as having an act of violence perpetrated against you. And it's important for you and it's important to you to not equate the two for your benefit, not for theirs, not to be like all nice and compassionate to the mean person. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for you, the person on the receiving end of the nastiness. And I don't get why we're not teaching children this. I really don't. It seemed for so many years like it worked pretty well. Does that mean we had no bullying? No. Does that mean we had, everybody was nice to each other? No. But if I look back on my time in public school and there was bullying, I was bullied. And there was meanness and there was all that kind of stuff. Comparing to today, post Columbine, post anti-bullying campaigns, anti-bullying awareness, stop apps on your phone and all this. And I think it is 10 times worse. Now I'm exaggerating, maybe not 10 times. I haven't measured, but I think it's worse. I think it's noticeably worse. I think that kids are finding new and different creative ways to bully each other because of all the anti-bullying and the triangulation with adults. Come to us all the time, always report behind the scenes, say what was said. This person said a racist thing. When we empower them to find fault in everyone at all times and find the meanness, go find the violence in the words, we're actually disempowering them when it comes to coping with that. And we're eliminating the possibility that the kids can de-escalate this situation without our help. So you can have circles all day long. You can do restorative justice after the fact. You can do all the preemptive chit chats, advisory sessions, counseling sessions that you want before anything happens. But the subliminal message is, I need other people, namely an adult leader and a mediator, to protect myself. Instead of just giving kids a few easy to remember aphorisms or, whatever, to walk around within their head. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Okay. I'm responsible for my own actions. Yep. They can't live rent free in my head. Nope. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't react. I'm responsible for my reactions, and they are lesser because they are stooping to this level. I am not going to do this. I'm walking away. I am just going to, deal with it. Oh, if it happens again tomorrow and the next day, I'm going to go tell somebody and see if we can do something about it. But right now I'm just going to ignore them. And then if that doesn't work and they keep coming and coming and coming, because that's what happens to me. When I tried all these methods, it didn't work. The person kept coming and kept coming and kept coming and kept coming and physically aggressed against me at one point, literally stopped me and stepped on my feet so I could not physically get away. And that was it. And I grabbed her by the shirt. I didn't go punching like this thing. I grabbed her by the shirt as hard as I could and shoved her because my goal was to get her off my feet. It just so happened there was a giant thorn bush behind her. Now, I actually didn't know that at the time. I was just trying to get her away from me, and I shoved with all my might. And I was probably like 4 foot nothing, and she was at least over 5 feet. I was really tiny in 6th grade, and I just shoved her. She fell into the bush. She's flailing around in the bush, crying, whatever. Well, we both got suspended, and that was perfectly fine because we got different talking to. And the principal spoke to me separately, and he said, look, I understand why you did what you did. And I'm sorry that she behaved that way and was following me around. We've heard from some other kids that she was doing this and she was harassing you. I think he even used that word. And so I understand why you did it, but we don't allow that. We don't allow that on this campus. You may not lay hands on somebody. She's suspended too. And I've said the same thing to her. Plus, you don't go harassing people. But we have to have this line in the sand of where we don't do that. That was fine with me. He said he understood why I did what I did. That's all I needed. And I was provoked in that situation. But prior to that, I didn't do anything like that. I didn't lay hands on her. And I also didn't go behind her back and trying to ruin her life or anything like that. I just ignored her. I had other things to do. I had other, friends to talk to. I had other places to be. And we're not teaching kids to do that. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of I'm traumatized and I can't handle this and I'm triggered and somebody do something. Or I'm going to go whole hog and have a fight. Or I'm going to go whole hog and I'm going to cyber bully and cancel this person because they said words I didn't like. And then that's justified somehow. We're having this revenge, back and forth of these behaviors. How is that helpful? How is that helpful? So it's not that I'm opposed to restorative justice or restorative discipline. It's that I think it's missing a key component, which is to empower the kids and also hold individuals accountable for their reactions to things. Thank you. Yes, we're not teaching resilience. Resilience. Just, I hate to say it, being tough, being able to put up with a certain amount of BS in your life. All right, so let's see. I'm going to go through some of these questions. How then do you suggest ending bullying or getting parents to do their job to teach that and get teachers to do that? Well, that is a very good question. I'm not sure it can be done anymore in the schools. I think we're pretty far gone, but I think it starts with the adults having higher standards for how they treat each other. So if you see how school board members treat parents, and really, they do bully the parents. So then it's no surprise that the parents are coming back and yelling at them and saying, you got to do this. They're nasty. Not all of them, of course, but there are some who are absolutely nasty. I mean, we've heard hot mic things like, oh, fuck up, whatever. I mean, this is adult behavior. And then they wonder why the parents are ready, or they just go and ignore what the parents are saying without any explanation. They just sit silently, or they get up and walk out of a room and they do all these passive aggressive things because you can be passive aggressive as well as aggressive aggressive. And so I think we model for our children how we want them to behave. So the adults have to behave differently. When adult teachers and administrators are taking to Twitter to harass and bully colleagues who don't share their views, calling them racist, calling them mentally ill. You think kids aren't watching? Kids are watching. They're like, all right, it's cool for them. It's cool for me. I can do it. So if we don't hold ourselves to higher standards and we don't behave like mature adults who allow differences of opinion and understand that a difference of opinion doesn't necessarily make someone evil, it doesn't make someone malicious or whatever, that, okay, we disagree. Here's why we think what we think. He thinks what he thinks. Okay, that's fine. You're going to name call. Don't be surprised when the kids in the school that you run or you teach at name call. Don't be surprised. That is one way to do it, is set the standard. So you may not be able to, and with parents, I think because you can't control what goes on in the home, you have to have absolutely clear rules in the school that are enforced evenly across the board. You can't get soft because someone looks a certain way or comes from a certain socioeconomic class. And that's what's happened in the past 10 years with different, well, we can't suspend too many people because they're Black. We can't do this because of that. Or parents will go in and say, you're being racist with this. If you're going to respond to that and you're going to say, oh, yes, we're so sorry. You're right. We can't discipline your child. My kid was bullied in elementary school, like in second grade and in third grade again by the same girl. And what were we told when we went to the office to say, can you help this kid? She's so anxious. She doesn't even want to come into school. Well, there are cultural considerations. We have to be mindful of how we discipline her because I'm like, let me just ask you a question. If the situation were reversed and my child was the one bullying, and this bullying did involve physical activity, by the way, she was tripping my daughter, pushing her, shoving her. I witnessed some of it. I volunteered in the school. I witnessed it. So I was able to go as a witness. And the teacher was there and saw me witness it. So she couldn't hide because I was volunteering and I'm looking at the teacher like, gonna do something? Nope. So I go to the administration and I report this whole thing. And I said, this is going on. I saw with my own eyes. I'm not getting anything second or third hand here. And I get an answer about, well, it kind of is, different because of the, culture, blah, blah, blah. What's the message to the kids? They know you're doing it. They know you're giving them special treatment. Same thing happened in the middle school, charter public middle school. The kids bragged about it in the hallway. I taught there for a year as a volunteer. They would joke around and brag about how they wouldn't get punished. They wouldn't get disciplined because reasons, you can guess what they are. Well, when you do things like that and you play favorites and you say, well, there's, extenuating circumstances and we need power and we can't suspend and the message filters down to the students, special treatment for me. I can do what I want. And you are now empowering bullies. You're actually telling them, not in so many words, go right ahead. Push, shove, name call, do whatever you want, squish people, pull their hair. I mean, my kids had all these things done to them, shoved into the wall, hair pulled, hair touched constantly. My eldest daughter in her middle school she has very curly, long, thick hair. And she said she couldn't, first of all, the crush of people in the hallway just to get between classes. If you went there to visit, it was like you were kind of moving with the flow. It was almost like a concert. You'd be lucky you didn't get trampled. And kids would go up to her and just be like, oh, look at your hair. Look at your hair. And then she'd be touching her hair constantly. And yes, she was a minority in that school, but that was okay. That was perfectly fine. She didn't say anything to anybody. I said, why don't you say something? She's like, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to do anything. And it was just common knowledge who could get away with things, who could not. So you'll excuse me if I'm deeply cynical about the words are violence argument when they don't even discipline actual acts of physical aggression or touching or whatever. And same thing when it comes to sexual assault, sexual abuse. When they're telling people don't report it, or we're not going to report it, or maybe you're making it up, as happened in our local high school. The high school my eldest went to for 1 year. The principal was removed. You know what they did with him? After it was found out that he'd covered up numerous sexual assaults by telling the students, well, report. Why? Because he didn't want to suspend the accused. Why do you think he didn't want to suspend the accused? He ended up at the main office of the district, still employed. Just not at that school, not at any school, but he's working in the main office, still has a job, taxpayer funded job. But that's what happens. Kids are watching. Kids see how we treat each other. Kids see what standards we hold for each other. Kids see Don Lemon talking about shame them. Kids see Joy Reid calling every person who says that something she disagrees with a white supremacist and a racist and that they should be this and should be treated that way and the other way. But we don't call that incitement, do we? And we wouldn't say it would be justified if the people they're talking about hauled off and hit them, slashed their tires, or said anything about them that sounded the least bit racist or aggressive. That would be unjustified, but what they say all over the news is perfectly fine. And so, like I said, I'm saying a pox on everybody's house. Let's get back to core principles. And the core principle is violence and words are words. And we, I think, are smart enough people to understand the difference. And when those words move into specifically inciting criminal activity, go over there and beat that person up is incitement. Let's all go burn down the city. Let's all go and kick their butts. You go over there and punch him out. That's incitement. That's incitement. You're a dumb blah, blah, blah is not incitement, because you're not literally asking that person to commit a criminal act. You're not. It's provocative. It's rude. It's not in keeping with the standards of decency in a polite society. It might result in someone doing something violent if they make a poor choice, but you didn't cause that. That's the difference. You did not cause it. And I think it's time that we explain to our kids the difference. Let's see if there's any other stuff up here. Did you guys have anything specifically that I might have missed that you wanted to talk about? Let's see. There was a foreign exchange student in my high school being bullied. One day I stood up for and it turned into a fight. I was suspended for my safety since they're Hispanic. My dad laughed at the principal. So, Zacho, are you saying you were suspended because they thought they'd come after you and hurt you more? I'm guessing that's probably correct, but weird that they would suspend you instead of like try to have some kind of a meeting about how there should be no acts of retaliation. But these acts of retaliation are going to be more common when we continue to send the message that words are violence, that those kind of acts of retaliation are going to increase. And at some point there will be a tipping point. I don't know when, and I hope I'm wrong, but I predict there'll be a tipping point when people who are getting disciplined more often than not for things like words get pissed off about the people not getting disciplined when they're hitting people and harassing people and canceling people and slandering and libeling people and, you know, those kinds of things. And when they get good and mad about the double standard, when things start to really hurt, enough people are losing jobs, kids are getting kicked out of school or suspended, or, you know, whatever is hurting them enough, and they start seeing these double standards, that there will be pushback. There will be pushback. And that's why I keep harping on this issue. I don't want that to happen. I don't think it's necessary. And there are times I wonder if that's the goal. Because one of the things people do when they're trying to divide people so they can't be strong together to defend against whoever really wants power over them is you foment discord. And one of the ways you foment discord is you treat people unequally. You have randomly applied double standards that are hard to predict, that are, you know, just like, today we wear a mask. No, tomorrow it's okay. These people don't have to wear a mask, but you have to wear a mask. It's not because they're lazy or stupid. It's by design. When you are so confused and caught up in that where, you know, you're always the perpetrator, but you're never the victim, or you feel that way. And when you do things like that, everybody's going to feel that way at some point. Everyone's going to feel that way at some point. That's when you have the greatest degree of division and chaos, where rules just people don't care about rules at all, because they're like, who cares? Nobody cares about these rules. Today they're enforced, tomorrow they're not, whatever. And that's when you're going to see like real violence, where people start saying, what difference does it make? Gloves are off. That's what you see in Portland. That's what we saw in Minneapolis. When you look around and realize that the standards don't hold true, that you can't count on that same standard protecting you, what is your incentive anymore to behave? As if you're a kid in particular, what's your incentive? Just being a good person, right? I want to rise above and be a good person. But if we were teaching kids how to do that, we wouldn't have these situations in the first place. So we're not really doing that. We won't even come out and define what that means, except that apparently it's a bundle of identities, and that the more oppressed you are, the better person you are, or something. Like virtue is attached to victimhood lately. It's not attached to making decisions that are constructive, productive, and advance like a kind of a society where we have less violence and discord. It seems like the opposite. Oh my gosh, you have trauma. You have the 17 different intersections on your chart of intersectionality. Oh my God. Oh, well, we have to protect you. And anything you might say or do is obviously self-defense because you have this list of 15 different immutable characteristics, not all of which are even immutable. Some of them are chosen, but we've made them immutable because they're on our little chart. And you're so many intersections of victimhood in this power structure that, I mean, by all means, please take to Twitter and use racial epithets against people you perceive to be your enemies all day long. It's understandable. It's okay. Yeah. No, it's perfectly okay for you to invade female spaces and, be aggressive against lesbians and, because they don't want to date you, even though you were born a man. And that's perfectly fine because you're so persecuted and threatened. It's all right. It's okay. Your violence is understandable. This is where we are. Like, they're not explicitly saying that. It just happens. You go out and you see these things on, whether it's TikTok or Twitter or even the news. Well, I just think blah, blah, blah. And people are like, interesting. Yes, very. I can totally see your point of view. And I'm sitting here like, what are you smoking? This person is an aggressive sociopath. They're antisocial and they're a sociopath. They probably have 2 or 3 different personality disorders. And you are validating that because they claim enough victimhood classifications. And our kids are watching. And they're taking from that and they're going, all right, so I see how this works. If I want to be immune to any punishment or discipline when I want to gang up on my enemies, see what I do? I declare myself this, and this identity. I'm golden. And you might sit there and think, Deb, do you really think that people do? Yes, I do. Actually, really do. And the reason I do, and I'm not saying it happens all the time, and I'm not saying every person who has an identity list like this is that type of person. Don't hear me saying that. I'm saying that there are opportunistic, sociopathic people with personality disorders who do this, and some of them are children. Probably because they're growing up in households like that, or they see their teachers doing that. And if you spend 8 hours a day with people, you learn your lessons well. And they learn the language. They learn the social currency of the environment in which they are. And their need is to survive. Their need is to fit in and belong. We're told all the time, they want to belong. We want to foster belonging. Well, if the message is that belonging happens more easily if you are a victim, according to these standards, aren't you going to have an incentive to be a victim? Might you start interpreting more and more and more words as violence? Isn't that how we get to things like they said the name Trump? I'm so traumatized. And if you think I'm exaggerating, let's harken back to when I was a volunteer teacher in that school and I was teaching debate. And in the course of teaching debate, I showed the kids a clip from a movie featuring Denzel Washington about the great debaters. It was actually a movie about a Black debate team that went up against a white debate team, and they were debating segregation of the debate teams. They were having this debate about debate and about segregation and so forth. And I just wanted them to see an example of a really good debate. And I thought this would be relatable. They're telling us it should always be relatable. They should see people who look like them in the material. And while I don't really buy into that, it happened to be an excellent example of debate. So I figured, all right, I'm going to please the school. And it's a great example of what I'm trying to show. So I bring in this clip and I show the clip. Clip is over. This was the first of 2 times the same student used this verbiage. She said, well, I just have to say, I'm really triggered. I am so triggered. And I said, I'm sorry, what? Like, what triggered you? What do you mean triggered, first of all, and what triggered you? She said, they were segregated in this movie and they were segregated in different teams. I'm like, it's history. Yes, this is actually based on a true story. This happened in real life. This did occur, and they were debating how wrong it was. I know, but I just can't. And I'm so angry right now. I can't function in this class right now. I have to leave. She left. 6th grader walked out the door into the hallway. Nothing I could do about it. I mean, she just literally left. And I was a volunteer, so I didn't have the power to like discipline her, punish her, whatever you want to say. So I just said, all right. The other students kind of looked at each other, looked at me, and a couple of them were like, I think I should go check on her. Right. And the others were just like rolling their eyes. I mean, there was a mix of reactions. They didn't all agree with her, but that did happen. And that was 4 years ago. And the next time it happened, we were having a discussion about definition of terms. Now we're talking about words. We're talking about the meanings of words. And in order to make my point about how subjective the understanding of words can be, so it's really important when you're debating to give the audience, the listener, the judge, whomever, and your opponent an operational definition of words you're using so that you're arguing the same thing. You're not like going past each other because you're not using the word the same way. So to make it easy, to illustrate the point, I said, let's talk about the words rich and poor. These are words people toss around all the time in debates, right? And political debates, especially the rich, the poor, tax the rich, you help the poor, whatever. I said, let's get some definitions on the board. What is rich? What is poor? And I just started writing down, went around, had the kids standing up kind of in a half circle. And we ran around, I just wrote down everything they said. Didn't matter what it was. And we did this until every kid had thrown out 2 or 3 examples. And then I stopped and I said, what do you guys think? Is there one definition of this word? And they all were looking at each other like, oh, wow. No. And then I started asking my questions. I said, all right, now what's the definition of it when you live in New York City? You live in Alabama. I mean, I'm just throwing out different circumstances. Suddenly, everything changed again, and they're adding new words to the board. So this went on, and it went on for poor too. Again, the girl is showing signs. She's getting like, I can see like physically she's getting upset. And so finally I didn't want to give her the attention she obviously wanted. I didn't think that was fair to the other students because she was doing so much huffing and puffing and like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And I was like, not going to go there. Just going to wait until she makes herself really oppressive with her triggering. And she's like, it's happening again. And I'm like, what? And she says, this is so wrong. And she just had a complete meltdown there in the classroom that I was wrong for saying that there was any other definition of poor in particular than hers. Hers was the only one that mattered. That's the definition. How dare I challenge it? And it wasn't just me. It was the other students. The other kids were like, but this and but that and but the other, whatever. And she was having none of it. Left the classroom again. And these are 2 anecdotes, same person. So you might be tempted to go, okay, one kid's having a meltdown 4 years ago. Where did she get these ideas? Why did she feel that way? Where did she get the word triggered? And how many times have we heard in the ensuing years, more and more and more kids, even young adults, even college students, even grown adults talk about being triggered by something somebody said, or, that was incitement, or that those words were violence, or I felt bullied, or I felt this, ergo, it was true. It is real. We have gotten to the point where we are teaching kids, maybe not explicitly, but it's between the lines and certainly through our behavior, that the impact matters more than the intent, and that your feelings are truth. We even use terms like your truth. There's no the truth. There's your truth. My truth is as poor as me. That my income and the way I live, I am poor. And don't you dare tell me I'm not. Yeah, but if I show you these people are way worse off and they have this and that. No! Don't you dare take that away from me. Or I am traumatized by whatever happened. Okay, but would you say, that this person was raped? And you were on the receiving end of mean words. Do you think that it's possible that you might be belittling or, like taking something away from the term trauma when you make mean words equivalent with rape? Don't you dare. I'm a victim too. My truth, my experience, my lived experience is all that matters. And when we do things like that, when we give equal weight to lived experience versus reality across groups of people. So one person's lived experience is truth. And you might say, but Deb, you're a hypocrite. You just said you had these 2 anecdotes happen. And therefore, A, I admitted they were anecdotal. B, I said that's just one kid and the rest of the kids didn't act like that. I'm just asking you to think about the possibility that her view and her attitude has, spread to more people. All right. That is something that is not a good thing. It wasn't a good thing if it's one person in the class. It's not a good thing if it's 100 people in the school. But it came from somewhere. It didn't just originate organically out of her or even her household. It came from somewhere, and it comes from ideas. So I'm not saying that my reality or what I experienced with that kid equals automatically everything that's happening in the schools. I don't know that. Maybe not. You guys might go and gather some data and find out that, no, it's actually really rare. Kids don't talk about, being triggered, and they don't talk about their truth, and they don't do that a lot. And that would actually surprise me, but I invite you to go do it. I mean, I hope you're right. I hope that this has not spread. Okay. So I'm not saying the same thing they're saying. I'm saying I observed this, ergo I know it's possible, ergo I know it's increasingly likely if that gets validated by adults and systems, teachers, etc., parents, the news, entertainment, it's more likely. We're setting the stage of what the social mores are. This is okay. This is our standard. And I think just looking around at cancel culture, etc., that it's probably likely that it has spread. That I saw like the beginnings of something, and probably other people in other parts of the country saw the beginnings of things, maybe didn't know what to call it. And now they're looking around going, oh, that's what that was. And I'm just observing that this phenomenon is not helped. It is not reduced in frequency when we tell kids words are violence. And yes, we are explicitly in many cases telling kids words are violence. There are schools explicitly teaching that. Do I have a receipt to show you at this very moment? No, I don't, but they do exist. You could probably go to Parents Defending Ed and find curriculum examples galore, or No Left Turn in Education, etc. They've collected these things. They do exist. There are even things that say, when are words violence? So I'm not making it up. Let's see. And here we have social media says you're right. Let's just pretend they're all bots and people from other countries, as 75% of the US participates online, but only makes up 7% of the total user base. It is really hard to know what I'm just saying. I get letters every day from teachers in different parts of the country, red states, blue states, purple states, you name it. I get comments every day on my YouTube channel from teachers. And there's a consistent thread, that runs through them. And that is that violence is increasing. Physical altercations in the schools between students, that is increasing. Those levels are increasing. And what's also increasing is verbal violence, as the kids are calling it these days, but verbal assaults, verbal abuse, verbal bullying, not just of kids, but of teachers as well. You're a misogynistic pig. You're part of the patriarchy. You're, colonialist, racist, da 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 da. What happened in academia at the university level and the college level has now filtered down to the K-12 level. And it was only a matter of time before that happened, right? Because the students come out of there, go become teachers. They don't necessarily realize that they're, encouraging these viewpoints, but they are. When you tell kids that, impact matters more than intent, what do you expect? What do you expect? So that's what's happening. The teachers backed up against a wall. We've seen professors in colleges having that happen to them. And now we're seeing teachers in classrooms. We've seen video of it, kids fighting with each other in the classroom, etc. So yeah, the murder rate went up 30% from 2019 to 2020. That could be a variety of factors. Could be, inflation, poverty, being locked in, more mental illness, loss of jobs, dignity, loss of a loved one, so many things. But I think it would be wrong not to consider the influence that the rhetoric has had on people and what they're doing and the justification they might have in their mind for doing it. If you tell people and you refer to them as a group, you refer to them as a group, not individuals. You're not speaking to individuals. You're not treating people as individuals. And you're not saying each individual one of you is responsible for your individual actions. Oh, you threw a rock and hit that store window and it broke. You're under arrest. I don't care that you're in a riot. You're under arrest. Oh, you vandalized a car, or you shoplifted. When we tell people as a group because they all look a certain way or espouse a certain view, you're victims. You're oppressed. You feel pain. You're being hunted. You're being violated. Your bodies are under attack. Your bodies are under attack at all times. Just you step out of your home and you're under threat. We have to have the talk with our children because they look a certain way. And the second they leave the house, they're under threat. When you tell people that enough times, it starts to stick. Why, especially kids, why would they not believe you? And then when your actions follow that, no, we're not arresting people. We're letting them out on bail immediately and they're walking free. We're not prosecuting shoplifting because, poverty. We're not going to enforce these rules anymore. We're not going to observe what has held for over 200 years in this country as the laws of human interaction in a free society. We're instead going to judge people by the color of their skin or, their political viewpoint, and we will selectively enforce the law. I went to a reopening protest here in North Carolina. They shut it down and arrested one of the protesters who was simply standing on the sidewalk. Standing on the sidewalk, protesting the lockdowns. She was arrested because she didn't disperse, not bothering anybody, not vandalizing anything, arrested. And according to the governor, the right to protest was suspended. He just suspended it, suspended the First Amendment because lockdowns, because of his decree. Now, that failed in court and people were allowed to go and protest under certain very specific conditions. Like you had to get a permit and you had to do this and you had to keep moving and you had to wear masks and blah, 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 blah. And even then I went to the second protest, followed I didn't wear a mask, but we followed those rules. They couldn't enforce the masking rule. That was kind of ridiculous, but we were all moving and in this prescribed area that we were allowed to protest, and they still shut it down. They still arrested people. They arrested 2 more people for stepping on a sidewalk that the cops were just standing on and saying, don't step on the sidewalk because we are here. And they're like, but it's a public sidewalk. We just said, if you step on the sidewalk, we'll arrest you. So who was being provocative? The police or the protester wanting to walk on the sidewalk and not in the street? They got arrested. Meanwhile, some months later, in the summer, rioters lay waste to Durham and Raleigh, just, like breaking windows, vandalizing, you know the drill, like mini version of what happened in Minneapolis and Kenosha. Anything happened to them? No. Very few arrests. Stores closed permanently. Other stores tried to reopen multiple times, couldn't because their windows kept getting broken. And it was, and guess who went out and marched with them? The governor. So when people see that often enough, and then you want to say, where's their violence? You're going to get some cynicism from people like me. You're going to get, no, they're not. Violence is violence. Violence is violence. And if you're going to keep doing this, uneven-handed distribution of justice, you're going to end up with kids who get the message, and soon you're going to have more violence. It's just what I'm saying. That's what I see, and that's what I think. And so I guess in answer to the reactor who was saying, they disagreed with me, and that, words, when you call someone a name, you should expect to be hit. I disagree. I think it's stupid to call people names. I think it's rude. Just because something's dumb doesn't mean that it's illegal. Okay. So, another good example of this is the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Another uneven situation when it comes to the media. We can have a healthy debate about whether Kyle should have gone across state lines to Kenosha at the age of 17 with his rifle to defend or help out or whatever in the wake of the first round of riots. We can argue all day about whether that was a smart decision. I would say no, probably not a smart decision. I would not be pleased with my child if they did that. I would not support them doing that. Okay. I wouldn't support them going with or without the rifle. Okay. Because you just don't do that. It's not safe for you. But he's not on trial for being stupid. He's not on trial for being reckless. He's not on trial for being naive. He's not on trial for any number of things that you could find fault with. He's on trial for first-degree murder of 3 individuals who aggressed against him, the last of whom is still alive and admitted it on the stand the other day, that the gun was not raised and the trigger was not pulled until after he pointed his weapon. In fact, if you watch the video, Kyle shows such amazing trigger control. He's lying on the ground in a prone position, extremely vulnerable, having just been hit in the head multiple times by a skateboard. And this guy walks up first with it down at his side, and Kyle doesn't do anything. He's got the weapon pointed, but he doesn't pull the trigger, even though this person is advancing in his direction with a weapon, but it's down at his side. The second the guy gets down in shooter position and does this, he pulls the trigger, because that's what we're taught in training. When someone points a gun at you, that's called drawing down, and you have any reasonable person would believe that their life was in imminent danger. That is self-defense. That is literally self-defense. As long as it's down at his side, I mean, I'd feel threatened. I don't know about you. I'd be really scared. Someone's walking up on me with a gun, but you don't get to shoot them because they haven't drawn down on you. They do. It's a different story. The guy admitted it. He admitted it. Okay. So this situation is happening and everybody's talking. The same people, the very same people who will tell you that we need to empty the prisons, abolish the police and all this kind of stuff. And, blah, 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 are now turning around and saying, lock this kid up for all eternity, throw away the key. We need more law and order against people like this. Why wasn't he arrested on the spot? Why? A million different things. And he was arrested, but I mean, the point is, he didn't run away from the cops, but they're like, why didn't they shoot him? I've seen that. Why didn't they shoot him? If he weren't white, they would have shot him. And it's like, I don't think the police make a habit of shooting people who are peacefully walking towards them with their gun down and obviously not in a position where it's threatening, turning themselves in. I don't think they make a habit of doing that. Now, if he turned and ran away, maybe he would have been shot. We don't know. He didn't do that though. But it's this kind of double standard that makes people say, really? Words are violence? How about these people who are saying he should be strung up? He should be this. He should be that. Anybody who supports him should be. That's not incitement. It's a double standard. Now, I don't think it is. I think they're just rude, nasty, awful people who don't deserve to have jobs speaking, on professionally on the internet or on TV. But are they inciting violence against people who support Kyle? I think that's a stretch. That's a stretch. But if they're going to say that it's incitement to just call someone a name, then we need to go and have a look at Don Lemon. And we need to have a look also at Mark Lamont Hill, who says things to Chris Rufo, like, what's so good about being white? Or whatever. What's good about, name me one good thing about being white. That's okay. That's not any kind of, you should just be polite and answer that question. Don't get all upset. Don't get your feelings hurt. It's a double standard. And since we can't change that, let's just stick to basic rules. All right. So I've probably talked y'all's ear off, and thank you for coming. I do appreciate that. Anybody have any other questions before I kick out of here? Yep, this is true. They can't attack the substance anymore, and they see that, so they're attacking the person. The judge, yeah, well, his ringtone was pretty funny, though, I have to say. The judge has the ringtone, proud to be American. I'm actually surprised that didn't get more heat than it did. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, this is also true. The one guy told him he was going to kill him, and they were chasing him. Self-defense. Yeah, he did. And we heard it on the videos. We saw it. We saw this last year. We saw all of this stuff. So none of this is new. Anything else? So do you guys agree? I'm just curious, for those of you who are still watching, do you agree with me that we are not teaching kids to be resilient, to withstand like name calling, for example, and basic, verbal rudeness? Not harassment. I'm not saying you should teach a kid to put up with harassment. I'm just saying somebody goes, oh, you dumb, blah, 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 or whatever. Do you think that by making it like, well, let's go find out what they said after the person beat them down? I mean, do you think that the message there might be the wrong message? Okay. Absolutely agree. People are saying 100%. Do you agree with me that giving kids some just simple aphorisms to remember to help them control their behavior, or just something really quick and like we were given, like sticks and stones or, whatever, do you think that is helpful? Because the whole long drawn out, let's sit and have a chat and get everybody together in a circle and you need a group to discuss it is kind of unwieldy and hard to carry around with you in your back pocket. I mean, I this is I'm still here. What the heck happened? It's like just clicked off. Do you think this was a good point? No wonder so many kids have anxiety today. This is so important. Yeah, I don't know why sticks and stones went out of vogue. I have no idea. This is so incredibly important. Nobody disagrees that anxiety is on the rise in children. I don't care what side you are on of the political fence. Okay? Nobody disagrees that these rates are rising. Suicides are rising. Kids are coming home, just like going into themselves and on their phones, whatever. And everybody's got a pet, group or person or technology to blame. But nobody disagrees that it's happening, which makes it that much weirder to me that we're not equipping kids with tools to prevent anxiety and in fact are doing the exact opposite. It's almost like all the people who work with children today don't remember being children, don't understand children at all, don't understand the human brain. Like, I mean, I watch some of the things they do and they say this helps kids feel magical. This tells kids that they're safe. This makes them feel better. And I'm like, where are you getting this? Many of the things they're doing, I think, actually make bullies feel safer. I don't think they make regular kids, just average kids, feel safe. I really don't. When you make words super important, that's like, I know I'm afraid to talk to anybody. Like, I'm afraid to start a conversation. What if I say the wrong thing? What if the question I ask? What if the way that I interact with people? One of the things, like my youngest loves to compliment people. It's how she opens up conversations. We'll be out somewhere and she'll say, I really like your shirt, or your hair looks really pretty today, or I love your jewelry. I mean, she's really good at that. She just loves complimenting people and it makes people's day. You can see sometimes if their eyes light up. But lately, she's been more careful with her choice of compliments because she's concerned, what if I compliment the wrong thing? And if I say something and it's now considered a microaggression? I don't know. Is it? So I've told her, don't worry about it. You just say, if it's coming from the heart, it's their problem if they don't like it. You mean well, and you know that you're trying to do something nice. I don't want you to worry about their reaction. Their reaction is their business. You can't control it and you shouldn't own it. They did it, not you. So I say that to her because I don't want her to lose that wonderful loving kindness of complimenting people. And it does make probably 99% of people who hear whatever she has to say feel good. It's a lovely impulse. It starts conversations. She even made a friend that way. But I don't want her having the anxiety about it. But I'm saying to her, it's their problem. Are we doing that in schools? Are we telling kids, you know what, if somebody doesn't like what you have to say, they don't like your opinion, that's their problem? No, we're not. We're actually telling the teller it's their problem. Choose the right words, say the right things. This is offensive. That's offensive. This could be triggering. That could be a microaggression. That creates anxiety. You can't keep up with that. How do I keep up with the number of things that someone else might take offense at? And if the standard is their offense, the thing is or isn't offensive based on how they react to it, that's critical theory, by the way. That's part of critical theory. The impact matters more than the intent. The system is racist because the impact, the outcome was disparate. There's a discrepancy in how successful Black people are than white people, how happy Black people are than white people, how whatever it is. If there's any discrepancy, it's because the impact, it's the result of racism, first of all. And it doesn't matter that the people didn't mean to be racist. It was racist. It doesn't matter. It lives in the system. It lives in the impact. That's what we're teaching our kids. We are literally teaching our kids that. So no, we're not teaching them critical race theory. Like, let's all read Derek Bell. No, but we're teaching them in this critical pedagogy of impact matters more than intent. What it means to you matters more than what it meant to the speaker. And if you're offended, they need to do something. They need to do something. They need to apologize. They need to, express their regret. They need to atone. I mean, Nicole Hannah-Jones says that every white person alive in America today needs to collectively atone. We need to collectively atone for things that people who look like us did 180 years ago or whatever. That's what she says. That we have this collective guilt. We need to collectively atone, and even that won't make it right. So you give a message like that to children, and they're now going to hold not just the speaker, but anybody who looks like the speaker. You're all guilty. These are the messages that are baked into that kind of ideology. When we say they're teaching critical race theory, no, they're teaching a theory about human interaction. They're teaching a theory of race. They're teaching a theory of power. They're teaching a theory of language that is rooted in, postmodernist thought, critical race theory, and, about the law, critical theory in general. Critical race theory is just one part of theory. There's gender theory. There's all kinds of other theories, but the critical aspect of it is be critical. First of all, tear things down. Things are wrong. When I don't like something, I got to go find something to blame. And I need to tear it down before I can possibly fix it. That's it in a nutshell. And impact matters more than intent. And that is an incredibly damaging, anxiety-inducing lesson to teach to children. I can't possibly stay ahead of your feels. I'm not psychic, and I don't want to, I've decided, the adult, have made my decision that I'm okay if I offend you. Because I have a life to lead, and I cannot possibly stay ahead of whatever is offending anybody in my audience on this day. I do the best I can to be, compassionate and empathetic and understanding and even-handed and all the things, whatever, respectful, but guaranteed there are people out there who are offended by the things I say. And I'm sorry, I don't care. I don't. I really, truly don't, because my intention is not to offend you. And if that is not good enough for you, too bad, so sad. You go do you. The good news is you don't have to watch. The good news is you're not forced to deal with me. The good news is we live in a free society where you can live the whole rest of your life not encountering me at all. But we're not teaching that good news to our children. We're making it like bad news. This person is representative of all the people who share this one immutable characteristic with that person. So every place you go, you're going to be victimized again and again and again and again. Oh, and P.S., that thing that hurt you, you're now traumatized. It's going to live in your brain forever and ever, and you can't do anything about it. They talk about trauma like it's permanent. And that bothers me as a person who experienced childhood trauma and I say had because I work on it, and I'm not going to permanently have this PTSD from it. But that's my problem to solve. It's not society's problem. It's not even the fault of it's not even the problem of the people who did it to me. It isn't. It just isn't. My mother's dead. Not much she can do about that, right? It's, my sister and my father don't speak to me. Okay, super. Whatever. Am I supposed to let them live rent free in my head for the rest of my life because of the ways that they've hurt me? No, they're irrelevant to me. I experienced trauma. I don't live in it. To say I'm a trauma victim. I'm a traumatized person. It's like, no, you are not. You were traumatized. Whether you remain in that state is up to you. They're not going to change, and we can't rewind and undo time. We can't undo that thing that happened. But it's your decision now. It is your life, your emotions, your mind. Are you going to live in trauma, or are you going to move past it, through it, past it, onward, upward? Don't let them own you in that way. And instead, we are glorifying trauma. It's one of the things now that you can have, that you can be, that gets you social credit. I'm not down with that. I think that's bad to teach kids. I think it empowers bullies, and it creates a whole new group of victims who otherwise wouldn't have been victims, or it's like self-inflicted victimhood. And the tragedy is, I think a lot of kids are doing it without really realizing they're finding a way to identify as a victim because it makes them feel safer. Because if you're a normie, if you're walking around going, yeah, not traumatized, don't have any of these identities, don't subscribe to this at all. I'm not your I'm not your whatever. I'm not an avatar for your political activism. I'm just me. You could be on the receiving end of some serious backlash. That I've seen that happen to kids too, where they're just like, yeah, I don't buy in any of this garbage. And they don't get away with it. They don't get to just be. It's like, what are you? What are your identities? Declare your pronouns. What? Not any of this. Oh, so you're one of those. Yeah, I'm an individual. And that was the last thing I wanted to address, that the reactor had said they didn't know what I meant by individualist, because that's in my little intro. Individualist. To me, that means, as I said at the outset of this live broadcast, I know where I end and other people begin. Pretty clear on that. And I ask that others respect the same. So you do you, go live your life. And as long as you are not violating other people's boundaries, and as long as you are not breaking the law, which is violating other people's rights, that's fine. I might not like you. I might not disagree. I might not agree with you. I might look at your life and go, whatever. Like, I wouldn't do any of those things. Might want to steer clear of you, just like you want to steer clear of me. But I'm not interested in soliciting people in power to stop you from living your life the way you see fit. If your assessment of risk is that riding a motorcycle without a helmet is fine, I mean, I think you're an idiot. I think that's quite risky, and your family should probably have a talk with you about how they feel about that, because, you might be putting their emotions at risk at the very least. If something happens to you, maybe their financial security, if you're the provider for the household. But I think it's reckless. But I'm not down with asking the law to prevent you from doing it. That's your business. You not wearing a helmet on your motorcycle puts you at risk. Primarily, it does. It's not bothering me. In fact, I steer clear of motorcyclists on the highway, period, helmets or not, because I don't want in any way, shape, or form to be involved in an accident with someone on a motorcycle, because that's devastating, generally, for the person on the motorcycle. So, but I don't want people making laws and enforcing my standards on other people. The burden of proof is on me to prove that you, through your actions, are violating my rights before I go asking government to restrict your actions. That's what I mean by an individualist. That's it. That's it. I think it is objectionable, even immoral, for people to go to government and say, make a law that they have to do the same thing I do because I think it's right. That burden of proof needs to be awfully high, that the person asking for that is directly impacted by my behavior. And they better bring it, because very often it's not the case. And that's what we see lately. We see whole armies of people wanting to dictate everything from, what we put in our bodies to, what we say, the words we say, the political beliefs we hold. You're a domestic terrorist because you disagree with me about education. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not trying to instill fear in people so that they will behave in violent ways. I'm not trying to instill fear so they'll turn on other people or, no. I actually hate the fact that a lot of the things I tell parents probably does instill fear. That's not my goal. I'm trying to educate. I'm trying to inform. And if that happens to make you feel scared, I do apologize. I didn't make these policies. I'm just presenting you with the facts. If I tell you, you probably should be afraid of this, in the sense that this is concerning or this could have a negative impact on your child, it is not with any glee. And I do try to offer you a solution, which is, if you feel sufficiently afraid, then you might want to leave. Back away from the situation, pull your child out of the situation. If you don't feel afraid, if you think you can manage it, then don't. But that's not how terrorists act. Terrorists actually create situations that are scary. They don't just explain situations that are scary. And what I see parents doing is going to school board meetings and explaining the scary situations, relating stories of scared children, of abused children, of children who've been violated, of children who've been abused, like in every which way. They're telling, they're not creating a situation. They feel threatened because they're speaking a lot and loudly and not nicely. They're not couching their words all that much. They're telling people, do your damn job. Stop doing this. Get the porn out of the library, prosecute the sex offenders, fire the people who let it happen. Is it aggressive language? Maybe sometimes. But are they going to these meetings and explicitly saying, I'm going to do X to you personally that is violent? I think we've heard of maybe 2 cases that were remotely like that, and they were dealt with by local law enforcement. That is not anything that needs the federal government involved. That is not terroristic behavior. And yet that's the rhetoric. You say things I don't like, you're a terrorist. You vote in a way I don't like, you're a racist. You won't go along with my gaslighting and my lies, you're all of the above. That's filtering down to our kids. And the people empowered by that kind of thing are bullies, not victims. In fact, you create victims when you do that. So, all right, now I really am going to quit. So thank you guys so much for watching, for listening. If you wouldn't mind going ahead and smashing that like button, consider subscribing to the channel. If you are not already a subscriber, it really helps me out. I'm trying to get to 10,000 by Christmas. That's my little goal. Don't ask me why 10,000. It just, I'd love to cross over to the next digit. You can join the YouTube channel as a subscriber to the YouTube channel if you like, and I do appreciate that support. I wish there were more of you so I could really provide you with more value for your dollar in terms of like private things. I'm working on some ideas for bigger perks for you, but if you join the locals community, I think it's a bigger bang for the buck because you can come to Zoom meetings. I post, content there that I don't post anywhere else. And I also post a lot of things I put on Twitter. So for those of you who are not on Twitter, that's a good place to go to get like my curated content from Twitter, some of which is actually really good. That's about it. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have a great weekend and I'll see you next time.